Are you at a loss for words at critical moments when it's time for the big pitch and strike out? Is your idea of a good elevator speech asking someone what floor they're going to? Our speaker today is a graduate of the University of Delaware with a communication degree in interpersonal and organizational communication. As a prize-winning speaker, an award-winning author of 4 business books, and someone who panicked when the CEO of his 300,000-person company was on the treadmill next to him. We're all given an opportunity to make a good first impression, grab the big sale, get the promotion of our dreams. You say that, I don't know. Or simply just nail presentation. Much of the success of that presentation is what happens within the first few minutes. And sometimes that's being measured in minutes. Sometimes it's mere seconds, right? Hoping to show us the elevators don't always go up and down, our division governor is going to show us how important our mission is as a club officer to get on the elevator and spread the message of Toastmasters. Hey, look at thank you for your patience, Jesus. And ourselves. Please help me welcoming Tom Dowd as he presents Rising Elevators.
Why do we need to be prepared for an elevator? Well, a colleague and I were working out in a hotel gym in Charlotte, North Carolina. And there was our CEO of 300,000 people. We all had our headsets on, so we were fine. We finished our workout, the 2 of us get onto the elevator, and in came a hand that stopped the door. We didn't have 2 minutes. We had 2 floors. What is an elevator speech? Anyway.
It's 1 or 2 sentences that wraps up who you are, what you're passionate about, and they should be doing.
Okay. Anyone else?
It should be short enough to get out in the time that you ride the elevator. That's why it's the elevator speech, unless you're going to be in there sleeping.
Clear, concise, short.
It's really two-way communication, it's a connection with that person, and it's the bond that you're going to form with them in some way, shape, or how.
Okay, so we're finding that connection point. You had
I was going to just say, in the sales context, it's very concisely talking about the value proposition as something of interest and hoping to get some kind of outcome from that.
And that value proposition is going to come into play as we continue to talk through this. I like to describe it as you in a nutshell. But as we continue to build this out, it is who we are, what we've accomplished, where we hope to go, and those interests and value propositions, all of that wrapped together. What it is not. It is not a sales pitch. Because the forcing of our wares onto others becomes transparent, and it also becomes very thin. You're walking on some thin ice on whether you're going to get that two-way dialogue. So it's going to become very difficult from this point forward for me to sell you any books. So come see me at the spring. It's important to get over the notion that this is a speech. I heard that the average elevator speech takes 104 seconds. Do you feel you can get across what you need to in 104 seconds?
No.
We also may have heard that first impressions are made within as little as 7 seconds. Where do you fall on that spectrum when it comes to elevator speeches? Because it really isn't a speech, it's a discussion. What are you and what do you do? Well, you are not a banker, a professional, someone who works here at Unum, a social worker, a nonprofit worker, a helper, a Toastmaster. Why? Because you just labeled yourself. In your audience, it's going to say, so what? Or in this room, me too. Or who cares? And they may instantly lose interest. Well, If I can't say what I do, then I'll come up with something pithy. So if I can no longer say that I am a professional development coach, I can say I transform people into who they really want to be professionally, which is my side company mantra. Pithy and pitchy. I instantly disengage you from wanting to have that two-way conversation. What are you waiting for? My salesman. You're on your heels right now in defensive mode, waiting for me to jam my products down your throat. It's not a two-way dialogue. There's a reason why I didn't just come out here and give a 1-minute elevator speech as an example. I didn't have to. Somebody did it for me. It's a little different in this perspective because I'm giving you a presentation on how to give elevator speech presentations. But isn't every interaction we have really a presentation? Your success is about building this relationship. And this comes when you understand the audience. What drives them? What makes them tick? It helps even more if you have people spread the message on your behalf. The key is to understand that elevator speeches are not about you. It's about who you're talking to, and this comes about when you start asking questions, and you're curious, and you can share that value. They need to see the value, what's in it for them. And that gets across the point of what is that value. In this particular case, we want them, you, to walk away with how to deliver more effective elevators. When you do this, you don't want to be too rehearsed. You also don't want to lead. So let's use job interviews as an example. And I like to call this the king of all elevator speeches. I've seen far too many people struggle with the question, what's your greatest accomplishment? In a job interview, is there a right or a wrong answer? No. Will anyone know what your greatest accomplishment is? No. Then you can share one of your answers, formulate a strong answer, articulated answer relating to how you've overcome a business challenge, achieved a stretch goal, or collaborated with some business partners to overcome a business problem. This self-centered question in a job interview goes back to the value you can add to the organization. What's in it for them? We must relate to the audience. It's the same thing with an elevator speech. Until you find those connecting points, they are just words. I'm a banker, I'm a speaker, I'm a ... Many people in their head are saying, me too, so what, or gotta go. So you might hear the term elevator pitch. And this pitch instantly draws a negative connotation because you're waiting for me to buy something. I'm trying to sell you something in this pitch. Even though you talk to some people, and if you're on the receiving end of this, you might have had marketers who ask you those open-ended questions to keep the conversation moving, or those close-ended questions where you're forced to answer yes. You ever had one of those? It becomes very obvious. So this elevator pitch, this elevator speech, whatever you want to call it, get rid of the labels. In reality, is it a two-way conversation and hopefully a longer-lasting mutual relationship. And by the way, it is not a conversation starter when you start talking about the weather. The first secret to an elevator speech is to have some fun. Smile, enjoy it. Be engaging. You're never going to have this chance again to talk to this group of people or that person you want to speak to one-on-one. Smile and enjoy it. Be warm. Give people the desire to want to have a conversation. That's where you want to start. And you'll find success when you start to formulate this message on why it matters to them. And then how your services or interests can connect back to those people. And then, your goal is to keep this little thing moving. When I lost my job, in June 2013 after being with the same company for over 23 years. I went from Maine down to Boston in networking and job-seeking groups all the way around this state and others, as both a trainer and a job seeker. I saw this scared deer in the headlight look. What do they want? They want answers. They want a job. They want leads. I didn't give them any of that. I gave them questions. Because I wanted to make sure that they understood that even though they're unemployed and everyone in the room is unemployed, it's not in it what's in it for me. It's about what's in it for them. So I started asking questions of, what fields of interest do you have? Are there anyone in this room that might know someone in those fields? And all of a sudden, I'm starting to connect dots. What can I do for you? What can we do for each other? And all of a sudden, these answers start going across the table of 20 plus people, and this competitive thought that they had went out there. And now we're having a conversation. And now we're sharing information. Why? Because they saw the value in what was in it for them. What's this have to do with elevator speeches? Everything. Although I was out of work and I selfishly needed a job, I turned it around to the audience and found these connection points for them. They opened up, they saw the value, and I could then formulate my responses back to meet their needs, and I was able to then articulate an elevator speech for them to buy my first $2. But that's not the point. Because what I didn't tell you is those connection points created what they did for me. And they wrote my third one, displacement day when my job was looking for a job. Because we had deeper conversations than we could have ever imagined, because we started talking about values that met each of ours. So back to your point, do you see the value you're adding? And it became a mutual, deeper relationship, deeper conversation. So as we're going through elevator speeches, we're talking about how do you deliver this thing? What are your delivery goals? What do you want to accomplish when you're delivering your part of the conversation? Your success is contingent on people listening and being engaged. But if people start looking at their watch, you've got a problem. If you're doing all the talking, you've got a problem. We've got to find that personal connection. But what if you don't have one? Then ask. What brought you guys here in the first place? Those are simple questions you can ask. But as Toastmasters, and we all think we can talk sometimes, even if you think you're interesting, or even if you think you have an interesting topic, droning on and on and on is going to lose your audience, even in an elevator speech. We need to teach ourselves to be better listeners. We need to integrate their information back so we can then turn that around. And that will help us to achieve our outcome goal. And we'll get to the outcome goal in just a moment. But we need to be, for delivery goals, confident conversationalists. What do I mean by this? Well, we know in a situation, even just during the breaks, walking around the room, you're in a social networking situation. People are going to be judging you whether you like it or not. But this is about getting the skills to be gracious enough when you're talking to people to not be so quick to leave the conversation, but also not so dominating of the conversation. Know when to find the right balance. So let's talk about these outcome goals. You need to know what you want the outcome to be before you even have the conversation. Remember we were talking about setting goals, SMART goals? We want to set clear outcome goals here. And what that does is it allows you to narrow down the focus. And if I can have some assistance, please, in handing these out, this will help you walk through it. Because what you want to do is narrow the focus down to what you want the outcome to be. And this comes when you ask very formulated questions that can then allow you to get some responses so you can integrate those back in. But it's an elevator speech, and many of these speeches are spontaneous and chance encounters. How am I supposed to know what my goal is? How am I supposed to be prepared if it's a chance meeting? Practice. In fact, take some time after this presentation on the front page is to understand an exercise for you to write down what you want your goals to be. And as Toastmasters, we know what we want to do when it comes to speeches. And that might be, are you trying to inform? Are you trying to persuade? Are you trying to sell something? All of these can be an outcome goal just like it would be in a speech. Same thing in an elevator speech. What do you want this to be? If I'm talking to Jeff, it might simply just be informative. But there might be some people there I might want to persuade, like all of you, to go to the spring conference. You need to understand what you want your outcome goal to be, because that will then focus the line of questioning you use, which would then allow you to formulate the responses back and integrate them back in. I meet with someone once a month at my company. Someone I don't know. So I need an elevator speech, or lots of them. And in my elevator speech, I do not talk a lot about my past. It's clear, concise, and very short on what I've done in the past, because my goal in those situations is simply just to understand what I need to do to maneuver through the complexity of a larger organization. I want to learn from them and bring this back in, so that's my goal. So my questions move me down that path. And so it's not about me, it's about them. And by meeting their goals, all of a sudden it comes back to meeting mine. That mutual goal setting piece. We've talked a lot today about making first impressions for our clubs, for our members. Well, within an elevator speech, how do you make a first impression? Well, you start by knowing who you are and how you like to be described. Does your whole world revolve around your trade, your interests, your job, or does everything revolve around you being a Toastmaster? And by the way, there's nothing wrong with that. But you have to ask yourself, why should anyone care? Or will someone just say, well, that's nice. We can't be so generic to say, I'm a trainer. We can't be so pitchy to say, I'm here to transform you. What we need to break away from is this traditional approach of what you do type questions and responses. So with first impressions, you must believe in what you're trying to accomplish. So let me give you an example. I am a speaker, trainer, author, and coach. But I found that I come alive and I get really inspired when my clients finally get it. And I can see it in their eyes. That's when I get excited. Because I believe in what I'm trying to accomplish, and people need to see that passion in these conversations you're having. Next, know your goals. You need to narrow them down into something absorbable. Sure, I'm here to teach you elevator speeches. We're here to spread the great word on Toastmasters. Hey, maybe I'll sell a couple of those. See it spring up. But can all of these goals be equal? No. You have to narrow it down to one point. You have to have it absorbable so it becomes subplots to the main message. You want to make sure that you keep a very contained message of what you're trying to get across. You're going to be all across the board when it comes to being an elevator speech. Again, with first impressions, learn to listen. We try so hard in the first impression to get it all out there. Learn to listen. It's a two-way dialogue. And in order for you to do this, ask some questions. Be curious. And you can start with basic questions. Because when you're in an elevator speech or an actual elevator, when you're networking, people do expect the traditional piece. So you might be asked, or it's okay to ask, what do you do, where do you work? That's okay. It's traditional. You don't want to shock someone and surprise them. That's okay. But now you're moving from this listening component into it's time to engage. How'd you choose your field? What inspired you? What's your favorite thing about it, or what do you like most about it? So now we're going from this get to know you to engage to now passionately connecting and determining why they got involved in the first place. With the simple and thought-provoking question of, how'd you get started? Because now they're starting to say, now they're coming back here from their history and they're going to bring you up. And now it's time for the relatable piece. What keeps you involved? Why have you been here for so many years? Why do you keep doing what you're doing? Why do you wake up every single day thinking about this? Getting to know them, getting to engage them, finding the relatable pieces, and now starting to connect the dots. Because now you're connecting, emotionally connecting your dots to their dots to your interest dots. And it becomes this triangular piece. So I was sitting with a bunch of high school students, and I was going over job interviews. And I asked them the question, if you could be any type of tree in the world, what would it be and why? And I got the typical maple, oak, and birch. Then I got to the person I perceived to be the troublemaker. He stood up and he said, I'd be a cactus. Now, is cactus a real tree? I had no. He said, because I'm prickly. And no one knows me. But every once in a while, an animal will start to burrow in and feed off of me. And I'll start to feed off of them. I wish more people would get to know me. Any second. Besides lessons in making rash judgments, there's lessons in here about being memorable. What truly makes us human is emotion. We need to emotionally connect with the audience. Although I have kids, although I've been a kid, I needed to figure out how to maneuver through this class and teach them about job interviews. This kid took my lesson plan and threw it out immediately. And we spent the rest of the time concentrating purely on emotionally connecting with the audience in job interviews. I would have never gone down that path until he made it obvious to me that I needed to spend more time relating to that particular audience. So let's stick with job interviews. Job interviews are the same as a traditional elevator speech. In a job interview, you'll be asked, what's your education? What's your employment? What is your skill set? What are your interests? Well, in a traditional elevator speech, we're going to answer the same generic information. Hi, my name is Tom Dowd. I graduated from the University of Delaware with a communication degree. I've been in the financial world for 24 years, and I don't have too many financial skills, so I became a speaker, blah, blah, blah. Because it might as well be blah, 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 because that's what it came across. We get into this one-directional mode, and we keep going down that path. But to be effective, to be memorable in an elevator speech, you need to stand out and differentiate yourself. So I don't want to, as an example, I didn't want to become a communication major just because I wanted to learn to communicate. I picked my major alphabetically. Didn't like to dissect frogs. Biology test. Everybody's in business. Business was out. Communication, sure. But I stuck with it because of the concentration it had on interpersonal and organizational communication. And I learned why some companies survived while others didn't. I found the benefits of how people can effectively relate to each other in small group settings. I learned to become a better people manager because of it. I learned to maneuver through the complexity of large organizations, which was very helpful when my company went from 28,000 people to 300,000 overnight. That's why I have such a personal interest in teaching people to be students of their own organization. Because it will help them to more effectively relate to each other while still differentiating amongst others. You see, all of this are personal stories. And these personal stories stick. You might have chuckled when I said I picked my major alphabetically, but what was it? There goes that point. Communication. So let's take a couple minutes using the sheets that are there. And if you need a pen, we have plenty of those pens that were out there. We can give you those. I want you to take a couple minutes and turn your education, your employment, and your skills into a story. So maybe take 2 or 3 minutes to do this. Take your education, your employment, and skills and turn it into a short story. Doesn't have to be a whole thing. So does someone want to share their story? Room full of Toastmasters. Your opportunity to get up on stage and speak to someone. Anybody? Yeah, come on up.
As a boy, I worked at the family Chinese restaurant. I loved doing 2 things in my downtime. I used to love making forts out of sugar packets and then rolling quarters into the forts to destroy them to see how long they last. As a teenager, I decided to pursue one of those loves by majoring in engineering and learning how to build things. As a man, I am employed in destroying cell phones as part of electronics company. So I make and break things now.
Very well done. You went from childhood to what you did in about 30 seconds stretch, which was fantastic, because you brought us on this journey with you from these personal packets of sugar that we all visualize. There's that personal connection. And brought us into your family history to how it made you to what you're doing. You used humor on how you destroy cell phones. And we're going to remember what you do now. It was short, concise, 30 seconds, 104, it doesn't matter. You have your application, what you were saying, and that's what it's about. You had our attention. So very well done. So let's continue to connect these dots. And you're learning to make a solid first impression. We're moving away from this traditional, this is what we do type answers. We're coming in with these relatable parts. We're not jamming our products or services down people's throats. We don't think so. On the sheet is another opportunity for you to write down something. Because whether you're talking to people as officers of Toastmasters and selling the program of Toastmasters, or you have your own business, or what you do as a job, use any one of the examples, but write down a couple answers about what you sell, what your services are, what you're interested in getting someone to walk away with a conversation from you. Write down just 2 or 3 answers. And remember, this is about narrowing down your goal and your focus. So you might be involved in a full-time job, some side interests, your Toastmasters, other things you have going on, your kids. Just narrow that focus down and then take those 2 or 3 sentences to relate back to that point. Keep it compartmentalized. Because the next question is going to be, what are the benefits and features? What do you want he or she, the person you're speaking to walk away with from this conversation on the things that are interesting to you, the things you're trying to sell, or the interests you're trying to persuade them to be interested in? 2 or 3 benefits. Because elevator speeches are about solving problems. How are you going to solve their problems? And this might not take 2 or 3, and it might take a little bit more thought. So that's a takeaway for you to think about. What can you do to solve their problems? And these first 2 questions allow you to get there. I was hired by a 23-year-old to boost her resume. She hired me because she said there wasn't anything special about her and it was hurting her chances of finding a job. Well, when I'm hired and I'm working on someone's resume, I don't just grab all their information together and then write it for them. I bring them on the journey with me. And we spend a lot of time talking about competencies and skills and accomplishments. She said, and I quote, "I have no accomplishments." So with a little prodding, we were able to put down some accomplishments for her, and by the end of the session, she walked out saying, and I quote, "I'm pretty special. I had no idea I had that in me." My job is to have the client see their shining star themselves and walk away with something special, understanding what's special about them. You see, these personal stories humanize the interaction and allow you then to influence the dialogue that you're having. So we wrote down some sentences. Does anyone want to share some of those personal stories? Some of the interests that you have, you try to inspire or persuade or sell others with?
I'll give an answer to that third question. How do you solve the problems? You don't, and you can't. That may be contrary to what you're trying to share, but what you can do is to give them the skills and the idea that they can first recognize their problem and then work with them with some possible solutions to make them part of the solution that they will adopt and can continue on with and also share with others.
And that's a great point, because you cannot solve everyone's problems out there. But if you establish a strong enough relationship where you're building the trust and respect, they're going to listen. They're going to probably hold themselves a little bit more accountable. They're probably going to start to take a few more actions, and that's what we're here for, is to guide them to solutions towards their problems. So that's a really good point. So when it comes to getting your messages across to people, as you have done, very clearly and concisely, it's about message simplicity. So in order to deliver an effective elevator speech, we must first deliver it in a clear and concise manner. There is no set time limit to what an elevator speech can do. Get that out of your head. The 104 seconds, 7 seconds, just don't worry about it. It's knowing when to start talking and knowing when to stop talking are skills that you might want to possess when you're talking about elevator speech. So regardless of how long this is, you want to follow a path that will allow you to be clear and concise. But as we're doing this, remember, this isn't about me. It's about getting those connection points so you can bring in your points about education, employment, and skills as you're finding these connection points while still answering the questions, what's in it for them? So in Toastmasters, we teach the 1-3-1 method. Is a very familiar technique. The one is the point that they have to walk away with. The one they can't forget. Supported by 3 points or stories to support that, followed by a memorable conclusion. So if I start with something you can't forget, and then I support it with answers relating to how, or when, or where, or why that's supported, we then start compartmentalizing it still to get to that conclusion. You can change topics all you like, but not until you've done the 1-3-1 on your one topic. Compartmentalizing it, that's your one floor. You can't change floors on this elevator until you wrap up with that conclusion, and then you can transition on to another conversation. But a lot of times we just jump around, and then you lose those supporting points, and you can never bring it to conclusion. Think of it in terms as a speech in this conversation of 1-3-1, and you'll be able to be a little bit more clear and concise. So let me give you an example. I joined Toastmasters International because I was painfully shy and introverted. Toastmasters is a great program for anyone interested in increasing their confidence level and improving their communication and leadership skills. Over a short period of time, I gained a ton of confidence and started to enter some speech contests, and I found some success. My manager started to recognize me at work for my increase in communication skills and confidence level, and this led me down this path to start a program at work on professional development, which made me eligible for the National Speakers Association, led me down the path to these books, and so many other things. I joined Toastmasters International and would recommend it for anyone looking to improve their communication and leadership skills and to gain confidence. Why join 3 points or stories to support it in the round? All within, 30, 45 seconds. I want to talk about the do's and don'ts of elevator speech. And I like to start with the don'ts. Don't be vanilla. I'm a bricklayer, I'm an artist, I'm a conversation starter. You want to make sure that you come out and build that conversation with a two-way dialogue. The other part is avoid making it you don't want to be there. Have you ever been in a conversation with someone in a room and you're talking to them and they're doing this? They're scanning the room looking for that other person they want to talk to and you're not it. Yeah. If they're distracted, you look distracted, you're not going to have that engaging conversation. Be present. Make sure that they see that you're there and you can give them your full attention. Put away your cell phone. As obvious as it sounds. Be present and don't be distracted unless you're sharing contact information, and then it becomes a tool for your elevator speech and networking. Feel free to pull it out then. But I am stating the obvious of don't pull it out, because how distracting is it to see somebody do this? Yeah, I'm just checking a score, don't worry. It's very distracting. You want to stay present. I'm also going to tell you to not be professional. We get so caught up in being politically correct. We lose our time in our efforts to be the person we want to be. Be personable, be social. Sure, don't curse. But you're defined more than just your job or your interests. You're defined by who you are. Be that person you want to be in front of. And the last thing is don't over-market, don't oversell. It's not a sales pitch. It's a value-add conversation, but it is not a sales pitch. You need to understand what you can do to relate to the do's. Build rapport. Build that lasting relationship. If you've done this right, this is just the beginning of a budding relationship. Connect with the audience at different levels. Emotional levels, personal levels. But find those different levels to connect. Brag if it's relevant. We spend too much time being humble a lot of times in these elevator conversations, and we don't say what we want to say. Brag if it's a fact. So let me give you an example. If I am David Tucker sitting in this room, I would tell you I am a distinguished Toastmaster. And he should. He should be very proud. He worked extremely hard, but it's a fact. Sure, it might not have context in the middle of the street somewhere. Brag if it's a fact and it has context. But he should come out and say something like that in this. If he's presenting to you because you're looking to gain that credibility, brag if it's a fact. And I also suggest keeping a notebook. Why would I say keep a notebook with elevator speeches? Anybody?
Ready for choose for another speech?
For another speech, you have other speeches that are out there? To refine it. We have so many different stories that are out there. I've got 3 teenage daughters, enough said. And they say the craziest things. I don't tell them I write it in a notebook. You want these stories when they have different points that are out there. And so just jot them down. It doesn't have to be a full-blown story, just something to help you remember it. You can go back to it, because then you become familiar with it, and you can start using it in elevator speeches. Those impromptu moments are really prepared moments for it. But the other part is, to yours, is so you can go back and understand. It's almost like a diary. Is going back and saying, I had a networking situation or an elevator speech situation, how did I do it? I had my monthly conversation with someone last week, and I went back to some notes and said, how did I do? And I said, yeah, I did these things pretty well. And I probably went too far down this path on another. And so the next go-around in a similar situation, I know I will be better off because of it. Use that notebook or folder, whatever it may be, to help you move it along. What can I do for you? I found when I teach people how to write resumes or do job interviews that people live back here. They live in the past, and they say, okay, my past is going to get me the job, or is going to influence this person, or is going to make this first impression on someone because I'm hanging out here in the past. By living out here in the past, you never find those connection points to the other person. Stop living in the past and realize that it's just the starting point of this conversation. It's not the end. So I like to, again, continue to think in terms of what's in it for them, not what's in it for me, and use forward-looking type conversations and questions. So you might want to ask something like, well, have you thought about ... Or what are some of the roadblocks that you're running into ... Remember, they're providing us their problem. We can then provide them some potential solutions to move them down the right path. That's forward-looking conversation. And you want to integrate that in addition to your past. It's about connecting those passions, those interests, those things that you have in a clear and concise manner to create these moments of like-minded people so we can then start working together towards some solutions. But this only comes when you find something that's unique and memorable about yourself that you can share. Does anyone want to share, a couple of you, what makes you unique? Anybody?
I will. I was born with unwavering courage to ask really tough questions to have people think differently. It's gotten me in a lot of trouble, but it's also provided a different framework of thinking that people haven't thought of before.
I'll remember that next time I see you. But I will. And what I'll remember is you're going to be curious and you're going to ask me questions, and I'm going to be less defensive and on my heels. Wow, that's kind of cool. And we'll remember that about you. And when you come out in an elevator speech and say that, you can say it kind of funny, you can say it seriously, whatever the context leads, but with that little bit of vulnerability, that uniqueness, is that memorable piece that will stick with someone in an elevator speech. 7 seconds, 104 seconds, it's irrelevant. Let it stick. That would stick. Anyone else? Mark?
I'm known as being rather intense. I bring the Mark Henkel experience to everything I do. Whether it's web hosting, whether it's public speaking, whatever I do, you know Mark Henkel's with me.
There's a sense of irony in this right now. On how calm he's saying.
I know.
But that is unique about you. And if you're having a conversation, someone might say, I don't believe you if you say it in that tone, but you just came out and said, oh, and now we believe it. And you're finding those points that are connecting to you, and you're using it to your advantage. And it's not, you said the Mark Henkel experience, but we're talking about uniqueness, and several people laughed because they knew you, and they're helping to spread that word for you. The elevator speech is about continuing to make those connections with everyone, so it does play to your benefit. Elevator speeches are not really about you, but they kind of are. They bring you right back to what you want your delivery goals to be, your outcome to be, and your ultimate goal from what you want it to be. You see, elevator speeches were named for these chance meetings, and you don't have a whole lot of time to talk about it for someone. So we do need to be clear and concise. However, the direction of the elevator doesn't have to be up and down. The direction of the elevator is horizontal. What I mean by that is, it is extremely important and critical for us to meet our goals. And it does matter, what do I want to get out of this? But in establishing what matters to me, I have to figure out the criticality of how this relates to someone else and how to communicate these points. And your elevator speech becomes this two-way conversation of, how can I support you? How can I partner with you? How can I solve your problems? And all of a sudden, we can provide these clear, concise ideas, thoughts, and opinions to someone else in a horizontal approach on why.